The crowd started forming before the gates even opened. By 9 in the morning, the line stretched around the block at Ichikawa Zoo, and people weren't there for the lions or the elephants. They were there for one animal, a young macaque who, for months, had been sitting alone in the corner of his enclosure with nothing but a stuffed gorilla toy. But today, March 12th, something reportedly changed. And when word spread online that Punch might have finally made a friend, thousands of people dropped everything to witness it themselves. The question everyone's asking is simple. After all this time, after everything he's been through, could it really be true? For those just catching up, Punch's story doesn't start with celebration. It starts with rejection. When he was born at this same zoo, his mother refused to care for him. In the wild, a macaque infant stays pressed against its mother's chest for weeks, learning everything from her warmth, her movements, her protection. Punch never got that. Within hours of his birth, keepers realized she wasn't going to hold him, wasn't going to feed him, wasn't going to acknowledge him at all. So they stepped in. They bottle-fed him. They kept him warm. They kept him alive. But here's what people often miss. Survival and thriving are not the same thing. A baby monkey can live on formula and heated blankets, but it can't learn to be a monkey that way. It can't learn social cues, body language, conflict resolution, or comfort from humans alone. And eventually, Punch had to be reintroduced to other macaques. That's when the real isolation began. The other monkeys didn't accept him. Reports from visitors and online posts claimed he was pushed away, ignored, sometimes even physically bullied by the troop. Whether those reports captured the full picture or just the hardest moments to watch, one thing became undeniable. Punch spent most of his time alone. And in that loneliness, he clung to the one constant he had, a plush gorilla toy the keepers had given him. It became his security object, his companion, the thing he carried everywhere. To the outside world, it looked heartbreaking. To Punch, it may have been the only stability he knew. Months passed like that. Visitors would come, see him sitting in the corner clutching the toy, and leave with tears in their eyes. Social media posts about him went viral in Japan, then internationally. Hashtags formed. Petitions circulated. Some demanded he be moved to a sanctuary. Others wanted the zoo to intervene more aggressively. The zoo maintained that they were monitoring him. That reintroduction takes time. That forcing interaction could make things worse. And then, quietly, over the past few weeks, something shifted. Observers started noticing small changes. Punch wasn't always in the corner anymore. He'd moved closer to the center of the enclosure. He'd watched the other macaques more actively, not with fear, but with what looked like curiosity. He still had the gorilla toy, but he wasn't gripping it as tightly. He'd set it down sometimes. He'd leave it on a rock while he explored. But no one expected what allegedly happened yesterday. According to reports circulating online, one of the younger macaques in the troop, a juvenile roughly Punch's age, approached him. Not to push him away, not to challenge him, but to sit near him, just close enough to be present, but not so close that it felt threatening. And Punch, reportedly, didn't retreat. He stayed. They sat together for several minutes, separated by only a few feet, and then the other macaque moved away. No aggression, no drama, just proximity. It sounds small. It sounds like nothing. But to people who had been following Punch's story for months, it sounded like everything. Word spread fast. Someone posted about it on Twitter, then Instagram. Then Japanese news blogs picked it up. The phrasing varied. Some called the other macaque his first friend. Others were more cautious, calling it the first sign of acceptance. But the core message was the same. Something had changed. And by this morning, people wanted to see it with their own eyes. That's why the zoo was packed. Families who had never been there before. College students skipping class. Elderly couples who had followed the story from the beginning. They all wanted to witness the moment when Punch's isolation might finally be ending. Some brought binoculars. Others had cameras with zoom lenses that could catch every detail. The energy wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet, focused, almost reverent. Everyone stood at the enclosure's viewing window, scanning the rocks and trees, looking for him. And there he was. Not in the corner this time. He was sitting on a middle ledge, the gorilla toy beside him, but not in his arms. His posture was different, more upright, more alert. And a few feet away, on the same ledge, sat another young macaque. The same one from the reports. They weren't touching. They weren't playing. But they were together, sharing space. existing in proximity without conflict. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just watched. Some people took photos, but quietly, like they didn't want to disturb the moment. Others whispered to each other, pointing out small details. The way Punch glanced over at the other macaque occasionally, the way the other macaque groomed itself casually, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Because maybe, for that macaque, it was. Maybe this wasn't a grand gesture of friendship. Maybe it was just a young monkey sitting on a rock, and another young monkey sitting nearby, and neither of them feeling the need to fight or flee. Maybe that's all it was. But for Punch, who had spent so long being pushed away, even that was monumental. Here's what makes this complicated. We don't know what happens next. We don't know if this is a permanent shift or just a temporary moment. Animal behavior isn't a straight line. Acceptance in a troop doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen uniformly. One macaque sitting near Punch doesn't mean the whole group has accepted him. It doesn't mean he's suddenly integrated. It just means that on this particular day, in this particular moment, he wasn't alone. But it's also true that these moments matter. Social animals learn through incremental interactions. A juvenile macaque sitting near Punch without aggression teaches both of them something. It teaches Punch that proximity doesn't always mean danger. It teaches the other macaque that Punch isn't a threat. And over time, if these moments keep happening, they build something larger. They build tolerance. Then familiarity. Then, maybe, connection. The keepers at Ichikawa Zoo haven't released an official statement about this yet. They've been cautious throughout Punch's story, careful not to overpromise, careful not to declare victory too early. And that caution makes sense. Because if they announce that Punch has made a friend, and then tomorrow he's back in the corner alone, it doesn't just disappoint the public. It raises questions about whether the zoo understands what's actually happening in their own enclosure. But the silence also leaves room for speculation. And speculation, especially online, grows fast. Some people are celebrating this as proof that patience works, that the zoo's approach was right all along. Others are skeptical, questioning whether one brief interaction is enough to justify months of visible isolation. Still others are demanding more transparency, asking for daily updates, for video footage, for expert analysis of what's actually happening between these two young macaques. And Punch, in the middle of all of this attention, just sits on his ledge. He doesn't know he's trending online. He doesn't know thousands of people came to see him today. He doesn't know that his story has become a symbol for people projecting their own experiences with loneliness, rejection, and the hope for connection. He just knows that today, another monkey sat near him, and he didn't have to run away. As the afternoon wore on, the crowd at the zoo began to thin. People had jobs to return to, families to pick up, lives to resume. But many of them lingered longer than they'd planned, watching the enclosure, hoping to see another interaction, another sign that this wasn't just a fluke. Some saw the two macaques move closer together briefly before separating again. Others saw Punch pick up the gorilla toy and carry it to a different spot, which some interpreted as confidence, and others interpreted as regression. The truth is probably simpler than either interpretation. Punch is still learning. He's still figuring out how to exist in a world that didn't welcome him the way it should have. And learning isn't linear. It's messy. It's full of setbacks and small victories that don't look like victories at all until you zoom out and see the pattern. What we know for certain is this: Punch is still here. He's still trying. And today, for reasons we can't fully confirm yet, he wasn't sitting alone. Whether that becomes a lasting change or just a brief moment in a longer, harder story, we'll have to wait and see. But for the people who stood at that viewing window today, who watched two young macaques share a ledge in silence, it felt like something worth witnessing. It felt like the beginning of something. And maybe that hope, whether it's fully justified or not, is part of why Punch's story has resonated so deeply. Because we all know what it's like to sit alone, clutching something that makes us feel safe, waiting for someone to sit down beside us and stay. Tomorrow, the zoo will open again. The crowds might return, or they might not. The other macaque might sit with Punch again, or it might go back to ignoring him. The gorilla toy might stay on the rock, or Punch might pick it up and hold it close again. We don't know, but we'll keep watching. Because this story isn't over. It's still unfolding, one quiet moment at a time. And if you want to see what happens next, if you want to know whether this connection holds or fades, subscribe and turn on notifications. because Punch's story is still being written, and the next chapter might be the one that changes everything.